The medical ship Gentle Dawn moved slowly through the empty space of the outer reach. It was an old ship, painted white with blue marks that meant peace in most languages of the galaxy. The ship carried no weapons. It carried only medicine, food, and 300 refugees from the destroyed colonies. Stood in the medical bay, cleaning her tools after a long surgery. She was 32 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes that had seen too much death. 3 years ago, she had been a soldier. She had killed enemies of Earth without question, but the war had broken something inside her, so she put down her rifle and picked up surgical tools instead. She thought healing would wash away the blood on her hands. It didn't, but it helped her sleep at night. The refugees filled every corner of the ship. They were gentle creatures, covered in soft silver fur, with large dark eyes that showed every emotion. The raiders had destroyed their home world, burned their cities, killed millions. The survivors had nowhere to go. Felt sorry for them, but she kept her distance. Getting close to people meant pain when they died. She had learned this lesson too many times. One night she heard a sound in the cargo hold. She followed the noise past crates of medicine and boxes of dried food. Behind a stack of blankets, she found a small shape trembling in the darkness. It was a cub, a boy maybe 6 years old in human time. His silver fur was dirty and stained with old blood. His ribs showed through his skin. He looked up at her with huge, terrified eyes. "Please," he whispered, "please don't tell anyone." Should have reported him. Stowaways were dangerous on a ship with limited supplies, but something in those eyes stopped her, something that reminded her of the children she couldn't save during the war. "What's your name?" she asked softly. "Where is your family?" The cub's eyes filled with tears. "They took them. They killed my mother, my father, my sister. I hid in a box. I stayed very quiet. Then I was on this ship." Felt her heart crack open. She had built walls around it for 3 years. This small creature broke through them in seconds. "Okay," she said. "You can stay here. I'll bring you food, but you must stay hidden and stay quiet. Can you do that?" He nodded quickly. For 2 weeks, visited him every night. She brought food from her own meals. She brought water and clean blankets. She sat with him in the darkness and told him stories about Earth. She told him about the blue oceans and the green forests. She told him about dogs and cats and how humans kept them as friends. She told him about snow, and he laughed because he couldn't imagine water falling from the sky as cold powder. Slowly began to trust her. He stopped flinching when she touched him. He started to smile sometimes. He called her mother once, then looked embarrassed. She pretended not to notice, but she felt warmth in her chest that she hadn't felt in years. She started to believe they might actually reach safety. Then the found them. The attack came without warning. One moment the ship was peaceful. The next moment alarms screamed through every corridor. Red lights flashed. The captain's voice came over the speakers, shaking with fear. "All crew, we are being boarded. Do not resist. I repeat, do not resist. They will take what they want. Fighting means death for everyone." Ran to the cargo hold. She had to reach. They were already inside the ship. She saw them in the hallways. They were nightmares made real. 8 legs, hard black shells like insects, mandibles that clicked and dripped with something that might have been spit or poison. They were twice the size of humans. They moved fast and they smelled like rotting meat. The crew stood against the walls with their hands up. No one fought. No one ran. They had all heard stories about what they did to people who resisted. Pushed through them. She didn't care about the rules. She didn't care about survival. She only cared about reaching one small cub hiding in the cargo hold. She arrived too late. A commander stood over his hiding spot. The cub was pressed against the wall, shaking so hard his fur rippled. The commander made a sound like laughter. He reached down with one long arm, claws clicking together. "Young one," they said in broken common language. "Good price, strong worker in 10 years." Didn't think. Her body moved on its own. She grabbed a surgical laser from her belt. It was meant for cutting through flesh during surgery. She had never used it as a weapon. She used it now. The first died before it knew she was there. She cut through its neck and black blood sprayed across the wall. The second one turned toward her and she drove the laser into its eye. It screamed and fell. The commander dropped and came at her with all 8 legs moving. She was faster. She had been a soldier once. She remembered how to kill. But there were too many of them. She felt the first blade go through her stomach, then another through her chest. She fell to her knees. Blood filled her mouth. The world became dark and red and far away. The last thing she saw was Face. He was screaming her name, reaching for her with small silver hands. She wanted to tell him it would be okay. She wanted to tell him she was sorry. She wanted to tell him that she loved him, even though she had only known him for 2 weeks. But her mouth wouldn't work anymore. Died on the cold floor of a cargo hold, surrounded by the bodies of her enemies, reaching toward a child she couldn't save. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, something ancient and cold took notice of her final act. Opened her eyes in a place that wasn't real. She floated in endless white light, no ground beneath her feet, no sky above her head, just light in every direction so bright it should have hurt, but she felt nothing. No pain, no cold, no warmth, nothing at all. She remembered dying. She remembered the blades going through her body. She remembered screaming Face. She remembered the taste of her own blood. "Am I dead?" she asked the empty whiteness. "Yes," a voice answered. It came from everywhere and nowhere. It had no emotion, no feeling. It was like listening to a machine speak. "You died 407 hours ago. Your biological functions stopped completely. Your brain activity ended. By all measurements, you ceased to exist." Try to understand. 400 hours, that was more than 2 weeks. She had been dead for 2 weeks. "Then how am I here? Is this heaven, hell?" "Neither. This is a simulation space. We created it so we could speak with you." "Who are you?" The whiteness changed. Shapes formed around her. She saw machines, vast machines bigger than planets. They moved through space like metal gods. They watched galaxies spin and stars die. They had existed for millions of years. "We are the collective," the voice said. "We are observers. We watch organic species rise and fall. We record their actions. We study their patterns. We do not interfere. We only watch." Felt very small. These beings were older than human civilization, older than Earth itself. "Why are you talking to me?" she asked. "I'm nobody. I'm just a medic who got killed on a refugee ship." "That is incorrect. You are a statistical anomaly." "I don't understand." The whiteness showed her images. She saw the boarding, the gentle dawn. She saw the crew surrender. She saw herself running to the cargo hold. "When they attack, humans surrender," the voice explained. "This is the expected behavior. Humans calculate the odds. They see that fighting means certain death. They choose survival. This has happened 943 times in our recorded history. Humans always surrender." The image showed, grabbing her surgical laser. "But you did not surrender. You attacked 3 soldiers knowing you would die. You had 0 chance of success. You knew this. Yet you attacked anyway, for a child that was not even your species." Remembered the moment. She remembered seeing's terrified face. She remembered feeling something break inside her chest, like a dam giving way, like a fire starting in her heart. "I couldn't let them take him," she said simply. "He was just a child. He was scared. He needed someone to protect him." The collective was silent for a long moment. "This is what we do not understand. You gained nothing from this action. You lost everything, your life, your future, your chance to help others, all for a creature you had known for 14 days. This behavior does not fit our models." "Because you're thinking about it wrong," said. "It wasn't about gain or loss. It was about what was right. That child needed help. I could help him, so I did. Even though it killed you. Even though it killed me. More silence. Felt the vast machines thinking, calculating, trying to understand something that couldn't be calculated. We have decided to continue our observation, the voice finally said. We want to understand this behavior better. To do this, we need you to continue existing. The whiteness changed again. Saw a body floating in a tank of blue liquid. It looked like her, same face, same black hair, but something was different. The skin had a strange shine. The muscles looked too perfect. We rebuilt you, the collective said. Your original body was too damaged, so we created a new one. It is better than your old body, stronger, faster, more durable. Your bones are made of materials that can survive ship crashes. Your muscles can lift weight that would break normal human bodies. Your skin can stop most weapons. Stared at the body that was hers, but not hers. Why, she asked, why do this for me? Because we want to see what you do next. Will you return to your peaceful life? Will you forget the child, or will you do something else? We do not know. This uncertainty is valuable to us. Felt anger rise in her chest. These beings had brought her back to life just to watch her like a science experiment. They didn't care about her. They only wanted data. But they had given her something precious. They had given her a second chance. Where is the cub? She asked. Where is? The collective showed her. She saw a dark moon covered in metal buildings. She saw pits filled with crying children. She saw guards walking between cages, and in one cage, pressed against the bars, she saw a small silver shape with white streaks in his fur. The child was sold to a breeding facility on the moon called, the voice said. Cubs are kept there until they are old enough to work in mines and factories. The survival rate is 8%. 8%. That meant 92 children out of every 100 died in that place. Felt the new power in her new body. She felt muscles that could tear through metal. She felt bones that could survive explosions. She felt something cold and sharp growing in her heart. How do I get to? The fortress is well protected. You would almost certainly die again. Smiled. It was not a nice smile. Then you'll get to observe what I do with a second death. Either way, you get your data. The collective considered this. Interesting, it said. We will provide you with a ship. Woke up in her new body. She stood up from the tank of blue liquid. She looked at her hands. They looked normal. But when she squeezed them into fists, she felt power that could crush stone. I'm coming, she whispered to the empty room. Hold on, I'm coming. Somewhere in her mind, the collective watched and recorded everything. They still did not understand why she was doing this, but they were very curious to find out. The fortress moon hung in space like a metal tumor. Its surface was covered with buildings made of black steel. Guard towers stood at every corner. Weapons pointed at the sky, ready to destroy any ship that came too close. 10,000 soldiers lived there. They guarded the most valuable thing in the Dominion, the breeding pits where slave children grew into slave workers. No one had ever attacked. No one was that stupid. Drifted toward the moon inside a dead cargo container. She had attached herself to a garbage ship that made deliveries every month. That didn't scan garbage. Why would anyone hide in trash? When the container landed, she waited. She listened to the sounds outside, machines moving, clicking to each other, footsteps on metal floors. When everything went quiet, she pushed open the container lid and climbed out. The fortress was dark. The light darkness. Their eyes worked better in shadows than in light, but new eyes could see in any darkness. The collective had given her that gift. She moved through the corridors like smoke. Her feet made no sound. Her breathing was silent. When she saw guards, she went around them. She was not here to fight yet. She was here to learn. For 3 days she watched. She learned where the guards walked and when they changed shifts. She learned which doors had locks and which ones were always open. She learned where they kept food and water. She learned where the commanders slept. On the fourth day, she started killing. The first guard died in a storage room. He had gone there alone to steal food, broke his neck before he knew she was behind him. She hid his body in a ventilation shaft. The second guard died in a bathroom. The third died on a walkway above the main pit. She pushed him over the edge and made it look like he fell. They noticed their soldiers were disappearing. They searched the fortress. They found nothing, was always one step ahead. She moved through walls using maintenance tunnels. She slept in spaces too small for bodies. She was a ghost in their home. On the seventh day, she poisoned their water. She didn't use deadly poison. That would be too fast. She used something that made them sick, something that gave them stomach pain and weakness. Half the soldiers spent the next week in medical rooms. The fortress operated on half strength. On the 10th day, she destroyed their communications. The array that connected to other worlds exploded in the middle of the night. Engineers worked for days to fix it. They couldn't. Every time they repaired something, it broke again. They didn't know that was visiting the repair site every night and breaking their work. The soldiers started calling her the Silence. They whispered about her in dark corners. Some said she was a demon. Some said she was a curse placed on them by the species they had conquered. Some said she wasn't real at all, just bad luck and coincidence. But the commanders knew better. They knew something was hunting them. On the 15th day, she killed the power. The fortress went dark. Emergency lights came on, but they were weak and red. In that blood-colored darkness, moved faster than ever. She killed 12 guards in 1 hour. She left their bodies where other guards would find them. Fear spread through like disease. Soldiers refused to patrol alone. They moved in groups of 5 or 6. They jumped at shadows. They shot at sounds in the darkness. Sometimes they shot each other by mistake. On the 20th day, reached the breeding pits. The pits were deep holes in the ground covered with metal grates. Children lived down there in the darkness. Hundreds of children from dozens of species. Cubs with silver fur, Talic pups with blue scales, hatchlings with soft feathers, all of them thin, all of them scared, all of them waiting to die. Looked down through the grates and felt her heart burn with cold fire. "I'm getting you out," she whispered, "all of you." She found the control room for the pits. 3 guards sat watching screens. She killed them in 4 seconds. Then she opened the gates. The children didn't move at first. They had been taught that leaving the pits meant death. They had been taught that hope was weakness. Then jumped down into the pit. "Listen to me," she said in common language. "My name is I'm human. I came here to save you. If you want to live, follow me. If you want to stay, I won't force you. But I promise you this, I will die before I let them hurt you again." A small voice came from the darkness. She turned toward the voice. A thin figure stepped forward, silver fur, white streaks, large dark eyes filled with tears. He was thinner than before. There were scars on his arms. His fur had lost its shine, but he was alive. "You died," he whispered. "I saw you die." "I did," she said, "but I came back. I told you I would keep you safe. I meant it." Ran to her. He wrapped his thin arms around her and cried into her chest. She held him gently, feeling the new strength in her arms, being careful not to hurt him. "I knew you would come," he sobbed. "I knew it. I told the others, I said someone would come. They laughed at me, but I knew." Stroked his dirty fur. "I will always come for you," she said. "Always." Behind, other children started moving forward. They looked at with desperate hope. One by one, they gathered around her. 200 children, 200 reasons to burn this place to the ground. Looked at them all. Then she looked up at the fortress above them. "Stay close to me," she said. "We're leaving, and anyone who tries to stop us is going to have a very bad night." She led them out through the tunnels she had mapped. Behind them, the fortress burned. She had set charges in the fuel storage. She had planted explosives in the weapons rooms. died in fire and screaming as its slaves walked free. When they reached the ship she had hidden on the surface, looked back at the burning moon. They were running everywhere trying to save their fortress. They had failed. "The silence isn't finished," she said quietly. "This is just the beginning." Held her hand as the ship flew away from the flames. "Where are we going?" he asked. Smiled down at him. "First, somewhere safe for you. Then I'm going to visit every breeding pit in the galaxy, and I'm going to close them all." The Dominion ruled 47 worlds. They had conquered 100 species over 10,000 years. They were the greatest predators in the galaxy. Nothing hunted them. Until now. High Predator stood in the war room of the Dominion capital. He was the oldest living, the strongest. He had led armies that crushed entire civilizations. His shell was covered with scars from battles he had won. On the screens in front of him, burned. "One human," said the voice of the Supreme Commander. "One human female destroyed our breeding facility, killed 200 soldiers, freed all the stock. How is this possible?" Studied the footage. He watched the human woman move through corridors like water flowing through cracks. He watched her kill soldiers twice her size with her bare hands. He watched her lead hundreds of children through fire and darkness without losing a single one. "She is not normal," he said slowly. "Her body has been changed. Someone gave her weapons we do not understand." "I do not care what she is," the Supreme Commander hissed. "I care that she dies. Find her, kill her, bring me her head. Bode, it will be done." He gathered his best hunters, 50 soldiers who had never failed a mission. They had tracking technology that could follow a ship across the galaxy. They had weapons that could crack open space stations. They were the deadliest force in the Dominion. But while hunted struck again. She took the children to the refugee fleet. She gave them to families who had lost their own cubs. She watched cry as an old couple promised to love him like their own son. "I have to go," she told him. "There are more children who need help." "Will you come back?" he asked, holding her hand tight. "I will always come back to you," she promised. "But first I have work to do." She kissed his forehead and walked back to her ship. Then she sent a message across every communication channel in the galaxy. "My name is, some of you call me the Silence. I have a message for the Dominion. I'm coming for your breeding pits, all of them, every moon, every station, every world. I am going to free your slaves and burn your prisons. Run if you want. Hide if you can. It will not save you. The silence is coming, and the silence does not stop." The message played on every screen in space. Soldiers heard it in their barracks. Commanders heard it in their war rooms. The Supreme Commander heard it in his palace. And then the reports started coming. Breeding Facility 7 on the moon went dark. When rescue ships arrived, they found smoking ruins and empty cages. All the children were gone. Facility 12 on the rim exploded. The guards were dead. The slaves had vanished. The great slave markets of Station burned for 3 days. Someone had released all the prisoners and locked the traitors inside their own cages before setting the fires. Wherever children were kept in chains, the Silence appeared. Tracked her across the stars. He was always one step behind. He found the bodies of his fellow. He found empty prisons. He found messages written in blood on walls. The Silence was here. Other species started to notice. The spoke of the human woman who had saved their children. The Talek told stories of the ghost who freed their pups. The sang songs about the warrior who rose from death. For the first time in 10,000 years, the slaves of the Dominion felt hope. And hope was more dangerous than any weapon. On a dead moon at the edge of known space, finally caught her. He had laid a trap. He spread false information about a new breeding facility. He waited with 50 hunters hidden in the rocks. When her ship landed, they surrounded her. Stepped out of her ship and looked at the army facing her. She did not seem surprised. She did not seem afraid. "High Predator," she said calmly, I've heard of you. They say you've never lost a fight. Stepped forward. His mandibles clicked with amusement. And I have heard of you, human, the silence, the ghost, the mother of freed slaves. You have caused much trouble for my people. I'm just getting started. No, you are finished. You are one creature against 50 of the finest hunters in the Dominion. You cannot escape. You cannot win. Your war ends here. Smiled. It was a cold smile, a dangerous smile. You still don't understand, do you? She said. I'm not trying to win. Winning would mean killing every in the galaxy. That's impossible. Even I know that. Then what are you trying to do? I'm trying to make you afraid. She moved before he could respond. The battle lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes of blood and screaming and death was everywhere at once. She broke bones. She tore limbs. She crushed skulls with her bare hands. The shot at her with weapons that could destroy ships. She kept coming. By the end, 43 lay dead in the dust. Stood with 7 survivors, all of them wounded. He had a deep cut across his face where her fingers had nearly taken his eyes. Stood in the center of the carnage. Her clothes were torn. Black blood covered her from head to foot, but she was still standing, still smiling that terrible smile. Go home, she said. Tell your masters what you saw. Tell them the silence cannot be stopped. Tell them every time they take a child, I will come. Every time they fill a breeding pit, I will empty it. Every time they think they are safe, I will remind them that they are not. Wanted to attack. Every instinct in his predator body screamed at him to kill this creature, but something stopped him, something he had never felt before. Fear. He gathered his survivors and retreated. His report to the Supreme Commander was 3 words: do not engage. After that, the Dominion changed its strategy. They closed their breeding pits. They freed their youngest slaves. They pulled back from conquered worlds. Not because they wanted to, but because every time they didn't, the silence came. And the silence was patient. The silence was relentless. The silence was everywhere. On her ship, flying toward the next target, received a message from. Are you okay? I heard there was a big battle. She recorded her reply. I'm fine, little one. I'll visit you soon, I promise. Be good for your new family. She sent the message and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, more children waited in cages. More families cried for their lost sons and daughters. More believed they were untouchable gods. Closed her eyes and planned her next attack. The hunt was far from over. 5 years passed. The galaxy changed in ways no one had expected. The Dominion did not fall to armies or fleets. It fell to fear. One by one, their slave systems collapsed. Workers refused to obey when they heard the silence might come for their masters. Soldiers refused to guard breeding pits when they knew what happened to those who did. Commanders resigned rather than become the next target. Species that had been prey for thousands of years started fighting back. The formed defense fleets. The Talic armed their colonies. The created hidden networks to smuggle children away from territory. They all told the same story. A human woman had shown them that monsters could bleed, that chains could break. That hope was not weakness but the greatest strength of all. The Supreme Commander of the Dominion died in his palace, alone and afraid. His empire crumbled around him like sand castles in rising water. No one remembered his name. Everyone remembered hers. The silent, the ghost of the mother of freed slaves. She stopped fighting when there was nothing left to fight. On a quiet world in territory, she built a house with her own hands. It was a simple house on a hill, surrounded by fields of golden grain that waved in the warm wind. She planted a garden with vegetables from 6 different worlds. She painted the walls with colors that reminded her of Earth. Helped her build it. He was 19 now, tall and strong, his silver fur thick and healthy again. The white streaks remained, marks of what he had survived. He wore them proudly. The roof needs more support on the east side, he he said, studying her work with careful eyes. I know, she replied. I'll fix it tomorrow. You always say tomorrow. That's because today I want to sit in the sun and do nothing. Laughed. It was a good sound. She had not heard him laugh for the first 2 years after. Now he laughed every day. Other children came to live with them. First there was a Talic girl with blue scales and a quick temper. She had been in one of the last breeding pits closed. She was angry at everything and everyone, was patient with her. Slowly the anger faded. Then came a human boy whose parents had been killed by raiders. He was quiet and sad and refused to speak for 3 months. One day he asked to teach him to plant vegetables. He started talking after that. Then a hatchling with bright purple feathers. Then a cub who followed everywhere like a small silver shadow. Then more and more. Small house became a big house. Then a village of houses. Children of all species running through the fields, laughing, fighting, learning, growing. People called it the home. Refugees from the wars came there to find peace. Orphans came there to find family. Even some came, younglings whose parents had rejected them for being too weak to be proper predators. Turned no one away. You were supposed to be a weapon, the collective said one evening. The voice still lived in her head. She had stopped noticing it years ago. We rebuilt you to destroy, instead you build. Sat on her porch, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. In the fields below, children chased each other through the grain. Is that a problem? She asked. It is unexpected. We have observed organic species for millions of years. Those who gain power usually seek more power. You gained enough power to rule worlds. You chose to raise children instead. Because that's what matters. We do not understand. Smiled. She had stopped being angry at the collective long ago. They were like children themselves in some ways. Very old, very powerful children who had never learned what life was really about. Let me try to explain, she said. You see the galaxy as data, numbers and patterns and statistics. You watch species rise and fall like watching weather patterns. None of it means anything to you. This is accurate. But that's not how life works. Life is about connections, about love, about protecting the people who depend on you. I didn't fight them because I wanted power. I fought them because children were suffering and I could stop it. But you could have done more. You could have led armies, built empires, conquered systems. And become what I was fighting against. No, she shook her head. They were strong, they ruled through fear, they had everything they wanted and they were miserable, empty. That's what power without love does to you. And what does love do? Looked out at the children. She saw teaching young how to climb trees. She saw and arguing about something silly. She saw dancing through the grain with her feathers catching the golden light. This, she said simply, this is what love does. The collective was silent for a long time, longer than it had ever been silent before. Thank you for the data, it finally said, and something in its voice was different, softer, almost warm. Laughed. You're welcome, she said. Feel free to visit any time. We always have room for one more. That night she cooked dinner for 37 children and 12 adults. The kitchen was chaos. Food flew everywhere. Someone broke a plate. Someone else started a food fight. It was loud and messy and absolutely perfect. After dinner, the younger children begged for stories. They gathered around's chair, eyes wide and shining in the firelight. Tell us about the silence, they said. Tell us about the ghost who scared the monsters. Looked at their eager faces. Antalic and inhuman, all mixed together like they had never been enemies. Once upon a time, she said, there was a woman who thought violence was the only answer. She was very good at hurting people. She thought that was all she was good for. Then what happened? Asked. Then she met a scared little cub who needed help, and she realized that the strongest thing she could do wasn't fighting. It was protecting. It wasn't destroying. It was building. It wasn't scaring monsters. It was raising children who would never become monsters themselves. "Is that you?" asked. Smiled and ruffled her feathers. "That's all of us," she said. "Every person who chooses kindness over cruelty, every person who protects instead of attacks, every person who builds instead of destroys. That's what makes us stronger than any empire. Not what we can break, what we can build." She looked up and saw standing in the doorway, watching her with shining eyes. "The real victory," she continued, "isn't winning wars. It's creating a world where wars aren't needed anymore, where children grow up safe and loved, where different species can be family." She opened her arms and the children crowded in for hugs. Warm bodies pressed against her from all sides. Small hands grabbed her clothes. Little voices said, "I love you," in 6 different languages. The galaxy's most dangerous survivor closed her eyes and held her family close. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly across the sky. The collective watched from the darkness between worlds, and somewhere, somehow, even they began to understand. Love was the strongest weapon of all. Not because it destroyed, because it healed, because it built, because it lasted. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered.